Games Brief is a blog on the business of games. I'm very focused on new business models. I totally believe in the future of free. In my more negative moments, I am pitching a book called The Death of the Console and Why It's All Over. So I just will declare some of those biases up front as we talk through this this panel talking about the self-publishing and different monetization strategies. Anybody who's attended my masterclasses, I know there's some people here, I teach masterclasses on how to publish a game, which covers sales, marketing, finance and distribution, and also one on how to make a social game, will know that my primary focus is tweak and iterate, keep kind of doing those changes. So you'll see that the panel we have here has been tweaked and iterated. We were supposed to have Joe Wee from Chilingo, who had to go overseas at the last minute. So stepping into the breach, we've had Paul Mays from Monumental. Many of you may know Monumental, a Nottingham-based developer and indeed publisher, very much focused on MMOs. It's not all they do, but MMOs is where I'm most interested today as we're talking about new business models. Paul Farley's already been introduced, but the iPhone direction. Patrick is from nDreams. I should also disclose I sit on the board of nDreams, so we're obviously deeply in collusion in our conversations here. And Patrick's got Facebook games, he's got PlayStation home games and other stuff to talk about. And Ian Baverstock from Kuju, I suspect most people in the room have heard speak at least once before. So it's a panel who, and Kuju obviously has done PSN and XBLA games through Double Six and through Zoe Mode. So what I hope we have in the panel is the okay, fine. Misread an instruction at the back. So what I hope we have on the panel is pretty well every platform and multiple different business models. The intention is not for me to monopolise the questions, it's for you to ask the panel. So I have a sort of a pre-granted question. I have a bunch of questions here which I can ask, and anybody who's seen me speak before knows that I'm not shy about talking. But I'm really keen to get you guys to ask questions of mainly this group, though I may stick my oar in if anybody says free doesn't work, for example. So I'll start off with the panel and just sort of run along from the end, starting with Paul, which is which business models have you experimented with, and what lessons did you learn from those?
Well, with regards to self-publishing, our initial business model, I suppose, goes back to 2006 when we signed a contract with Cybersports, who published the free-to-play MMO Football Superstars. And it's not technically self-publishing, but it's a much better business model because we actually got someone else to do the self-publishing for us, if that makes any sense. We have shares in Cybersports. We have a very close relationship with them. We cohabited for quite some time as well. So as a result, we were able to really go through all the motions of publishing a game, but someone else was actually executing that for us, and we also had a chance to learn from obviously a sort of number of the mistakes that were made, and I'm sure there's mistakes made in the publishing of any game at some point. We are now gearing up to self-publish our own title for the first time. And that's a game called Little Horrors, which will be coming out on Facebook later in the year. And this is a very interesting sort of time for us because we're keen to create a game that's going to cut through all the noise because there's obviously everyone and his dog is trying to get onto Facebook right now. So we need to differentiate ourselves, but at the same time, as we've heard today, there's so much good, now really well-established advice as to what works on Facebook that we obviously don't want to stray too far from the crowd. So it's a real balancing act that is for us, and we're kind of keen to learn as much from conferences like this as we sort of gear up for launch.
Brilliant, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I was touching on this a bit earlier on. When we set up our business, we were very much kind of approaching it from kind of traditional mindset. I think we always understood that we needed kind of a balanced kind of stream of revenues coming into the business. So work for hire and commission work was always very important to us, always played a major part, between 30 and 50% of our revenues. But we really weren't thinking about self-publishing 3 years ago. We were very much within that kind of traditional publisher-developer mindset until we tried it a few times. And you know, 3 years on, 3.5 years on, we still haven't seen, you know, like a penny of royalties from any of those deals. You know, that's become the norm, I think. And so ultimately, it wasn't really working for us. It was great. I mean, we probably saw that in the same way that we saw work for hire. Great, you know, you get your minimum advance, you cover the cost of development, you make a bit of a profit on that, but it's actually not going to take you very far. And in many cases, you're losing the IP or losing the lion's share of the IP. So for us, it wasn't really making any sense. We might as well just be a work-for-hire studio. So one of the big, you know, significant changes for us, certainly with the advent, particularly of iPhone, but I think, you know, now of the likes of DSiWare and PSP Minis, XBLA, Facebook, has been the opportunity to self-publish. And we still very much have used a kind of traditional model in terms of the one-time download. We've just launched Asher Ranch as the first game that we've used DLC. I'm pleased to report that's been phenomenally successful in terms of, you know, the conversion rate is around about 10% of revenues is coming from DLC. The DLC is actually hidden away in a corner, so folk are finding it, which is great. I think we can be far more aggressive with that in future. We're just about to relaunch that game as a free-to-play title with essentially what is a subscription model in it as well. So, you know, we've tried a lot of different things. We're still trying to work out, you know, what works best on individual platforms. Right now, DSiWare is actually working really well for us with just that one-time download model. So, yeah, again, it's about putting the right model with the right product, I think, for us.
Yeah, so we're in a very similar situation to Tag and Paul, actually. We're doing pretty much 50% work for hire, but we're not working with any games publishers. So we're working purely in that area with brands, with TV companies, and with film companies. And that allows us to make some money from that area. It's kind of like the engine room. It allows us to try doing self-publishing. So most of our self-publishing so far has been in PlayStation Home, which has worked very, very well for us. But we've just launched our first Facebook game, which is a narrative-based game called Spirit of Adventure, which basically every week there's a new bit of story, there's new puzzles, kind of Professor Layton-style puzzles, and it goes out week by week by week as the story progresses, and it's sort of aimed at middle-aged women, and it's quite different, quite certainly very, very different from Farmville and a lot of those kind of games. So we're very, very early in that process. We're experimenting, and we don't profess to have the answer to exactly how Facebook games work, but we're trying it out, and it's a really interesting area. We're also launching our first iPhone game. We've got an iPad game coming up as well. So we're very interested in self-publishing in the digital space. What I think is worth saying is that I don't think there's this sort of binary, you either work with a publisher or you self-publish. There's a lot of different models in between, and we're talking to people about doing co-publishing deals where, for example, you know, they might pay you to do something at cost. You don't make a profit on the development, but then you share in the back end. Or where we work with other studios, potentially art outsourcers or motion capture companies or whoever, to actually fund some of the bits and pieces of the development themselves in return for some of the royalties. So it makes it much cheaper for us to get new games out, and it allows sort of people to work together in a very interesting way. And I think that's a really exciting model for us, because it allows us to do more games quicker.
Right, and on to Kuju. I mean, Kuju Studios, over the last few years, have tried quite a few different self-publishing routes. We've tried a bit of iPhone work. We did some mobile work going way back. We've actually published self-published, I guess, whole PC games at retail. Simple lesson learned there is don't do that. That's a bad idea. Just don't even think about it. More recently, the Double Six Studio especially has been self-publishing stuff on XBLA and PSN primarily. And I think that's the main thing we should talk about today, and that's been pretty successful from our point of view.
Excellent. So, we got any questions in the audience yet? It's looking deeply quiet back there at the moment. There will be tests or people beating you up and thrusting microphones into your hands if you don't answer, if you don't have come up with any. So, okay, so I'll ask another one. These platforms obviously have quite different demographics, quite different approaches. Have we seen different business models working better with different demographics or different genre of games? Whether that demographic is age,